Oh, he's an 8-pointer. No, he's a 9-pointer. No, he's a 10-pointer. You can hang a ring on it, it counts. 1, 2, 4, 5, huh?
Keep going, you can get higher.
He's a 10-pointer.
I'll be brutally honest with you, for the last 5 years or so, don't get me wrong, I always look forward to hunting seasons, but I've really looked forward to Illinois' shotgun season, their first one. Specifically because my good friend Dan Schmidt and his little camera buddy David get to come down and play with me every year. And that's what this stuff is supposed to be about. I know we talk so much about trophy bucks and how to manage the ground and make your deer healthier and make your habitat healthier, leave the world a better place for generations to come, and that's all good and great. But you know what? This stuff's supposed to be fun. The longer I ride this rodeo circuit, the more success I have, the more I realize that ultimately you scrape away all this other stuff, and you know what? This junk is supposed to be fun. And frankly, what you see, most people, I'll give you a little inside information into the industry here. 9 times out of 10, when you see somebody's reaction after they kill something, it is fake as a $4 bill. Dan Schmidt, that stuff's real. That boy loses his snot every single time. And God, that is a blast to be around. So, and at the same time, another part of the reason I look forward to it is because I've got management bucks on this ground that desperately need to be removed. And Dan, ooh, he's more than happy to shoot management bucks. He's every bit as happy to shoot a management buck as he is a 160. So, and frankly, he's good. You put that gun in his hand, you go ahead and show him this buck, and this buck are all 3 of them that very well may show up where you're hunting, that if they do, you shoot them. And that boy, he does. He shoots them, and then he flat out loses his snot, and then he gives me a call, and that buck is always right there because it's nice and easy to find because he made a good shot. And that is what we're going to do today. Today, we're going out with Dan Schmidt on a management hunt.
So this is like homecoming for me. It's every year, West Central Illinois, my good friend Steve Bartylla, he has us down, and I'm not going to lie to you, it is really good deer hunting land. It's some of the best in North America. It is a large piece of property that Steve manages, and the deal is I'm going to go there and help him manage his doe herd and his buck herd. And with that buck herd, we're talking about, people say management bucks. It kind of has a negative connotation. The only real reason we use that term, management buck, is this is a buck that is not going to manifest itself to a trophy Boone and Crockett class deer. That's pretty much it. That's what we mean when we're talking about management bucks. Steve has lots of management bucks because it's a big property. It's several square miles of the best habitat in North America. I cannot overemphasize that.
Deer and Deer Hunting Properties is brought to you by Orion Hunting Products. Engineered for stealth and safety, Orion's modular, lightweight design allows you to set up camp anywhere you want to hunt. No heavy equipment, no problem. Orion Hunting Products.
Hey, Tim from Analogics. Don't go away. I want to tell you about a quick tip about protein sources throughout the entire year. You're watching DDH Properties. Hey, Tim here from Analogics. I'm the wildlife biologist, and today I want to talk to you about protein cycles throughout the year in the whitetail world. When you think about the year that a whitetail encounters, from January through December, the protein that is available to that animal is not consistent throughout the entire year. So as they come out of the rut, and this timing I'm going to talk about based on months is mainly for the Midwest area, but the same applies anywhere that whitetails live. When they've come off of the rut, they have been run down, their protein sources are dwindling, and the bottom of the protein cycle is usually 3 months after the rut, and that's before any green up has occurred. So like you think about it, here in the Midwest, all the crops have been harvested, the acorns have been eaten, the natural forage that was available earlier in the year has dried up. The protein sources across the landscape are to an all-time low during that time period. And what that means is the deer have evolved to survive that time, and they slow down their metabolism. They know that they're going to have a deficit at that time of the year, so they do things like, to conserve energy, they stop moving as far as they were moving earlier on in the year. So when you think about a deer trying to survive, he's not going to waste a lot of energy, especially when it's really cold out, trying to get food. So if they find a food source, they're going to stay tight to it, and they're going to utilize whatever they can. That is also a time frame when you have the biggest winter mortality rates, is when they've run out of food sources and there's just not much options for them. So if they don't have enough fat to get through that time period, they just cannot stay alive, and you get a lot of winter mortality. And bucks are more susceptible to the winter mortality because they have burned up a lot of their energy resources chasing does during the rut. So what you can do as a manager is think about the protein throughout the entire year as you're planning what to do in certain areas, and look at your whole property in the sense of how can I maximize protein throughout the different times of the year. So as we hit the spring green up, then protein starts to get back up to what is going to be the summer high period in protein. That's when there's a lot of lush green vegetation. You know, deer have limitless options because there's forbs everywhere, and that is the best time of the year, and that's also the time when the fawns are hitting the ground. So when you think about the whitetail in terms of the entire year, they need protein the most when those bucks are growing those new antlers, and when those fawns are first just starting to be born, and the mother actually needs a lot of protein to get the milk to those fawns. So you want to maximize the amount of protein in the summer. So there's things like clover, alfalfa, those are high in protein content. You want to put as much protein out to your deer as possible, so that's where the perennials really come in handy, and they're going to come back year after year to give them that high summer food throughout the high point of the protein cycle. And then as we start getting into the later part of the summer, the protein sources start to dwindle. Moisture is not as prevalent as it is earlier in the spring, so the lush green vegetation starts to dry up, the forbs are not as palatable, and this is at a time before the acorns have started falling, so there's another protein drop towards the tail end of the summer, typically when we have droughts, and at that time period would be a good time to supplement protein levels. So if you're in an area where you can feed, put out a good high protein food source and keep those deer healthy going into the fall. And then after the acorns start falling, there's another readily available food source, but that doesn't last very long. A lot of things like acorns, turkeys, raccoons, you name it, they'll eat acorns. And then as the acorns start to dwindle, then we're getting back to the cycle of low protein again. So thinking about the whole year, the protein cycle changes a lot. The high period is obviously spring green up into the summer, and the low period is right before green up at the end of winter. But think about the protein levels on your property and try and maximize the potential of the protein on your property today.
You know what? It's one thing to say, Dan, this buck does not look like a 3.5-year-old buck. And for him to say, yeah, oh, okay, it's another thing to see. Every property has a cap on how many mature bucks that ground can handle. Okay. By shooting the lower end bucks, what you do is you increase the odds of your higher end bucks not ending up having to disperse because they get crowded out. No guarantee. All you're doing is playing the odds. And this buck right here is absolutely perfect for Dan to shoot as far as I'm concerned.
It's that time. Opening day gun season. Look forward to this every year. It is beautiful out here. It is 32 degrees, just a slight hint of a wind, and we're going to a spot where I think we're going to see some deer. He's not one of the shooters, I don't think.
You know what? It's one thing to say, Dan, this buck does not look like a 3.5-year-old buck. And for him to say, yeah, oh, okay. It's another thing to see it. The first time he saw it, he convinced himself that it wasn't the buck he was after, because it's just too dang young. Well, as I said, that doesn't happen to be the case. When you're in a position like this, and you are enlisting the help of friends to help manage a property, these are the type of mistakes you really want. You want them to be overly cautious. Turns out in this case, Dan was. He passed up his first opportunity. Didn't pass up his second, though. That second chance, now that Dan was sure that was one of the ones that he was sent in to take, sent him right back down in there, and you darn right they made it happen.
Schmidt! He's down right there. He is down right there. I'm shaking really hard. That was so awesome. We saw that buck this morning and I passed him up. We only have 8 bucks on our shoot list for this hunt. And when you're hunting deer based off of deer that want to be taken off the property, you really got to be careful. That deer, he was a mature buck. He had one little busted point, but he's really nice. He's a really nice buck, and I'm shaking. I'm so excited. It was so close. He was 15 yards. He's an old warrior. Look at that. Yeah, he was just a 7-point. A couple little extra characters, and he had busted that 2 right there. We just punched our tag. Yes.
Next up on Deer and Deer Hunting Properties are 3 easy ways to determine deer movement on your potential new property.
Deer and Deer Hunting Properties is brought to you by Analogics, perfecting the science of deer feed. Ready to harvest a giant? Let Analogics help you attract, hold, pattern, and grow trophy bucks. Analogics, because there is no off-season.
So when we're looking at these properties, we want to know if there's deer there. Probably the easiest way to find out if there's deer there is have trail cam photos, right? So either previous years or current, those are what we're looking for. That's the easiest way to know if there's deer on the property. So if there are previous, ask the selling agent or the seller, hey, what do you have for last year, the year before? Let's see what's walking around on this property. Are there giants? Are there smaller bucks? What are we working with here, right? And so if there isn't, which a lot of times they don't, I would ask if it's a property, especially if it's a property that's been sitting on the market for a bit, is ask if we could get a camera out on that property. Here's a perfect spot for one. We have a nice tree to put it on. We have a trail system that is coming down into the water for them to get their drink. And it's a great spot to get some really good candid photos of those monster bucks cruising around. So ask them. Sometimes they'll let you do it, put it on there for a week or 2. Hey, if there's big bucks cruising around there or nice deer, that only helps the seller too. That's gonna obviously help with their offer price. So try to get those photos. If they don't have any photos or never have had any photos and they don't allow you to put any photos on there, that might be a red flag. So I always look for a good trail camera spot, and this is probably one of my favorites, overlooking water. So when I'm looking at properties with buyers, you know, it depends on the time of year, right? So if we're in June, July, May, I'm looking for rubs that are obviously from previous years. Looking at the color of this one, definitely wasn't done this year. It might be 2 years ago, it might not have been this last year, but I know there was some big buck movement here. In October, you know, September even, November, you're gonna look for the different color, right? Where it's been freshly rubbed, it looks nice, bright brown. That's a different type of rub we're looking for at that time of the year. But right now, when we're looking at properties, because we want to purchase that property and be in our new property for hunting season, I'm looking for old established rubs. This is what we're looking for. This has a lot of potential. One of the most important things I look for when I am taking a look at a property with a buyer, does it have trails, right? Probably one of the most important things to determine if there's deer on this land or deer going through this land. So when I look for this. I look for a well-established trail. When we look at a property, I try to establish where the bedding is and then possibly where they're going. If it's colder, wintry, it's snowy, you're gonna really see obviously the deer tracks, the trail system. If it's in spring, it's a little muddier, so you're gonna see it even better. Drier times of the year, it can be a little harder to find some of these tracks or trail systems, depending on what part of the property you're on. But this is one that you can tell they've been using for a long time, year after year, and you know there's deer here.